Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Duke Stefan, and in this video, what I want to do is go through what you actually want to be looking for when you are analyzing fights. So the first thing I want to recommend is that you videotape, you record on your smartphone, a DSLR, whatever you've got, actually record your fights. It is such an incredible tool to be able to use to go back over and look at what you did, look at what your opponents did, and really start to break down and analyze your own style and the style of other people so that you can really start to improve what you're doing. It's an absolutely invaluable tool. There are things that happen in the moment in a fight that you can't remember when you walk off the field, and you certainly don't remember every mechanic that you were engaging at that time. And being able to go back over that video and look at it is awesome. So the first thing I want to do is recommend that you record your videos, and I actually find that the best platform to put them on is YouTube. So create a YouTube channel and start putting your videos up on YouTube. Now, if you're worried about them being public and everybody can see them, when you upload videos to YouTube, you can make them unlisted or private, so nobody else will be able to see them. If they're unlisted, you can share a link to that video with other people, and they will be able to see that video, but only the people with that link. If it's public, anyone can find your channel and anyone will be able to see the videos. I would encourage you to make them public, because then people like me can find your channel, and we can look at your fights and maybe even potentially help you out. But it just gives us and the fighting community in general a better understanding of the breadth of different styles and technique that is out there. So um, firstly, let's have a quick look at the YouTube tools that you can use. So when you upload your video to YouTube and you're looking at it in playback, so you actually go to YouTube channel and you're watching it back, there's a couple of things that you can use on your keyboard to help you actually analyze the videos. And it's really simple. Obviously, your space bar to play, you can click the little play button. But the other one that's really important to know is the arrow keys. Now, the arrow keys allow you to skip forward or back 5 seconds in the video. So you can jump forward and jump back. Really useful tool. The other really useful tool is your comma and your period key. And what they do is they will actually move the frame by frame through the video, either forwards or backwards. So your comma goes backwards frame by frame, and your period key, or your full stop if you're in Australia, actually moves the video forward one frame at a time. So obviously most cameras, even in phones, will default to a 25 or a 30 frames per second. The file sizes become bigger, but if you can shoot at 60 or even 120 frames per second, it does make the video file very large. But it does mean that when you go back through to review the videos, because you have 60 frames within that 1 second, you're actually able to see more of what you did. So sometimes in a 30 frames or a 25 frames per second video, you will see a sword jump quite dramatically because of the speed with which we fight. So if you can capture in 60 or even 120 frames per second, you'll be able to really see in that frame by frame the option, the mechanics of what you did. You'll just have more frames to look at. So just to give you an example, so the other thing that you can do, which it's easier to show you on YouTube itself, is in the bottom right hand corner is the little cog. So you get the little cog wheel there, which is your settings, and you can open that up and you can change the playback speed. And you can change it from everything from 0.25 through to 2 times faster. So 0.25 is running at a quarter of the speed, and 2 is running at double the speed. So to give you an example in this, if we keep this running at normal, we'll just play this moment. Boom. So a really great moment there. So Leofric in the red has come up over the top of me. So that's me in the grey. He's kind of come in and suppressed me. He's done a great job with his positioning of not crowding me to the point where I can't become upright. So he's actually in a perfect kind of distance. But underneath that suppression, I manage to get an offside body shot on him from this position. Now, at full speed, watching that at normal pace, it's very hard to see what I do. But if we go back and watch that, you can drop this down to 0.25. And what you can actually start to see then is the mechanic that goes behind throwing that shot. So you'll be able to see he comes in. And what's great is that just like when you're doing quarter speed in your warm-up, you get the chance to actually kind of take more in what is happening in the fight. So it's really useful to watch this back time and time again. So nice bit of coverage there with the shield that drops behind. And if you see here, I've pushed up, so you get to see me push up. And if you watch my body, there's a big twist there. You can see my elbows come really deep forward. I've rolled right round underneath him. And that's powering that shot, which actually, to be honest, see, this is the other thing you get to check. That's landed flat. That's actually landed a little flat. Not completely flat. On that angle, there should be more black on the back of my edge visible there. So these are the things that you get to look at. So that was coming from here. So it's kind of coming on a bit of a scooped angle. So it is traveling slightly up when it lands. So it's kind of on track. But the reality is that that shot, well, I'll point that way because my screen's there, but on the actual playback, you're seeing it there. You can see that that actually probably landed a little flat, and that's a great thing for me to be aware of. So the little cog down the bottom corner here, you can change the playback speed. Super useful, really useful, because what you can do is you can then use the arrow key to skip back 5 seconds and watch it again, and then you can come frame by frame. So this is using the period key to go forward frame by frame. Now, what's really great about frame by frame is you get to really see every micro movement that's happening with somebody's form. So cannot encourage you enough to get in and use that. So that's your YouTube tools. The period key, the comma key for frame by frame, the arrows for backwards and forwards, and of course, the mechanic cog to be able to actually change the speed backwards and forwards. So really useful tools. I don't think they've got that on Vimeo. I think YouTube's probably the best around for being able to do that. So let's have a look now at the sort of things that you need to be looking for when you are analyzing your fights. Now, anyone that's kind of looked at a couple of the videos on this channel, you'll note that I started doing these fight reviews so that I could get better at my analysis. I'm quite an intuitive fighter, and I tended to, because I work as an actor and I do a lot of improvisation, my fight has actually developed from that. And so I go very much on intuitive nature in the moment. It's very much kind of based on the feel and the flow of what's going on. I've never been very analytical about what I do as a fighter. And so this whole stuff that I'm doing at the moment is about really getting better at developing that. And so this is the stuff that I've learned, being able to spend some time online with Sir Helgi and Sir Okta and Ianto and Tully and Leofric and some of the other guys and gals that come into this online training session. And basically every day for an hour, whenever we're available, and there's generally always at least 1 or 2 people on, we get online for an hour and we can analyze videos and we'll talk through what people are doing well, what they're not doing well. We'll look at moments that break down. And it's just an incredible tool to be able to talk shop and talk fighting with other fighters and really analyze what we're doing. So we'll look at each other's fights and we'll comment on it, and we'll really pick apart the form and the technique right down to the point of going, that shot, although it would have landed with sufficient force, well, perhaps it should have been called flat. And that's an awareness for me to be able to take away into my fights. So this is the stuff that I've really picked up, are the things that right now I'm looking at, and I encourage you, if you start looking at these things as well, you're going to really start to learn a lot about what you're doing and what your opponents are doing. So let's have a look. So footwork and movement. When do they retreat? So you'll see a lot of people, when there's an engagement, the opposing person will generally retreat back. More often than not, that's in a straight line. So looking for those patterns. When do they retreat? When do they advance? When do they feel comfortable enough that they've got control, or trying to take control, that they actually advance on you or you advance? What are the cues for that? When do they slide? When do they move? Rather than coming forward and back, they might go side to side. When do they step? Is it a full step? Is it a shuffle step? What are they doing there? When does someone stand their ground? So when you're watching a lot of fights, you'll notice there's a little bit of shuffle, a little bit of shuffle, a little bit of shuffle, but actually one of those people will end up, rather than retreating back that extra step, they'll retreat back a step to lure you in, then stand their ground and let you close the distance for them so they can get a timing break on that range. So when is someone standing their ground? Great to note, and good to pick up on when you can do that for yourself. When do they shift their weight? Are they moving from their sword foot forward to their other foot forward, their shield foot forward? Are they just sort of shifting their weight? Are they just repositioning themselves to get themselves queued up? And so the other thing that you start to see in this is you get those twitch battles between the really top end fighters, and you can really break that down and start to see the mechanics of the little step, the little shuffle, the little movement here. And because you're looking at this in such micro detail, you get the opportunity to understand even better that sense of somebody really, they did this tiny little move, but it was perceived as a pressure push. So the opponent responded to cover what they perceive to be the threat. It might be a push here that makes it look like a snap's coming. So they might just shift that shield. And then there might be a shift or a shuffle here, which might make it look like we're going to prime up for an offside. So then you'll see another little shuffle and these twitch battles that happen, and they can happen really quick because the perception's high. And this is how you start to get there. You start to really hone in on these things. It'll get you there faster. So things around footwork and movement, technique, posture and alignment. Check your posture and alignment. Are you throwing shots that aren't landing with enough power? Well, it might be that you are breaking posture when you throw shots. So we've seen some videos recently where a couple of people are throwing a snap, but as they throw it, or throwing a wrap, and as they throw it, they're actually trying to power the shot by counterbalancing and leaning their body back as they throw the shot. And what that's doing is it's actually pulling the shot up short and stopping the flow of power traveling through into the opponent. So rather than traveling through, it's actually slapping and not hitting with sufficient force. Same with a wrap. You're going to slap rather than actually travel through. And that comes from a break in your posture or your alignment, because you're not actually pushing through with it, and you're not keeping your posture and alignment right for the specific shot. So being able to see when those things are happening, and you will be able to go through your fights and go, I threw 5 or 6 shots in that, but none of them landed with power. You'll be able to see if that's something that's happening. Sword and shield control, you know, one of the things that I picked up is that I have a tendency, if I'm throwing a shot here and I'm not really thinking about my shield, I will move the shield out of a good defensive position with the natural flow of my body. So I'll keep this frame, which means that as I throw a snap, the shield's actually opening up a giant gap here. Whereas I want to throw that and just counterbalance that by using the shift in my shoulder to keep the shield in position for coverage. So I can note when I'm doing that. Is there a particular situation where that's happening? Is it that I've blocked and then there's a bit of shield drift, or is it just poor control? So you can look at those sorts of things. You can see where your tip is sitting on defensive positions. So, if someone snaps you in the head, is it because you had your shield here and your tip was high when your shield was here and your tip should have been rolled over, your wrist bent or something like that to get the tip down to cover that space? And so, there might have been a gap there because of the way that you had your sword positioned. So you get to see those things. You get to see, like we just did before on that other video, which is that side for you. I landed that shot, sufficient power, but actually the alignment was not quite right. And I should call that shot flat. So really important things to take note of. And I can go back now and, I know how I throw that shot. So I can be a little bit more conscious of getting that edge even more correct. It might be correct enough for most people, but if I'm really looking to be the best fighter I can ever be, I need to be accurate, and that's an integrity issue. So I need to get that right. You're not necessarily going to know that in the moment when you're throwing the shot. It's going to feel really close to being right, but as you go back and review it, you can start to see those little moments where things break down, and you can start to fix it and just become that better fighter. What is your opponent or your pace, rhythm, and patterns that you throw in? So do you have a kind of a set pace that you fight at all the time, and there's never a burst of explosive energy, or there's never a moment where you're patient? Are you always frantic and kind of moving around to the point where you're puffed out? So look at the pace, the rhythm, and the patterns within your own fighting. Look at that within other fighters. Look at some of the pace, the patterns, and the rhythms, and how they change in a fight. Someone that you know is really, really great and can kind of just on a dial pull out a shot. Well, what are they doing? How are they throwing that? How are they changing the pace and the rhythm, which affects the timing and the flow of a fight? So you can look for things like that. Physical connection. Again, coming back to that sense of, am I throwing a shot properly with my body? There's a really great example of a video we watched recently in the training session where, actually, I think I've got it queued up ready to look at. But, there was I was fighting an opponent who threw a shot down here. I defended here, recovered to here. And then when you break it down into frame by frame, you can physically see that there is a physical crunch from my body here, which is tipping my sword forward, allowing me to push through with a thrust that hits him dead square in the eye. I wouldn't have known exactly how I threw that shot, and I wouldn't have known the exact physical controls that I engaged to throw that without being able to go back and view that video. So, I mean, I generally know that I throw with my body pretty much every single time. Not all the time, because I'm not perfect, but I've got a really good physical connection for my shots. I'm well grounded. I've got good power rolling through the ball of my foot, up through my leg, hip, into my body to power the shots. It's generally pretty good, but there are times where it breaks down. When does it break down? Is it the third shot, the fifth shot, the seventh shot? Is it when I'm trying to transition from a snap to a thrust? Whenever you can start to see where those physical connections break down, so you can work on those moments. You can get back out on the pel or get into a sparring partner and break that stuff down. So there's some things that you can look for. Where do you maintain your physical connection through your shots? Where is your technique right? And that body connection through the shots being maintained. So a whole bunch of stuff around technique there. So, obviously when I'm talking sword and shield control, we're talking, are you on edge? Are you throwing with is it landing in a powerful position on the sword, or is it landing in mid blade where it's weaker and it bends? And so, all those sorts of things, you can really start to hone in on those. Awareness. This is the last set now. So, what feints, cues, and reactions are you creating, or are you seeing, and how do you see those in the fight? So, one of the big conversation points that Helgi and Okta like to make, which I'd not really heard it phrased like this before, was this sense of just watching the fight from within the fight. And we talk about taking your time and being patient, but it really is that sense of, are you able to watch the fight? There are times I know where I've blinded myself with my own shield. So obviously I can't see feints, cues, and reactions. So that's a problem. And it's great to know when that's happening. Is that a habit that I've formed that I need to break down and try and dissipate? So when you're in a fight, what are the feints and cues? So if someone throws this beautiful single shot snap into your head, they didn't just stand there and go boom most of the time. There will be some other action that they have done to move you, and it might only be a couple of inches, because at the sort of level that some of us are fighting at, I don't need more than the breadth, the width of the sword and a little bit more to hit you. I know I can get it through a really close gap. And so am I moving you enough? Because not only do I get that space, I get the timing break of you moving, stopping, and having to start move again. All of that creates time for me to be able to land that shot. And so by going back through these videos, you get to see, how are they actually throwing that snap? Oh, it's not just a single action. It's actually a drop from the shoulder that doesn't disengage the power cycle here, but actually makes everything look like it's crunching down for a leg shot that then scoops and throws into the side of your head, because at that point you've kind of committed to the leg defense. What is it? You can really break that down and start to see what they are. So that's one thing. How are you using, or how are your opponents using range and measure, which are essentially the same thing? I don't want to confuse you. Some people call it range, some people call it measure, some people call it distance, whatever you want to call it. When are you engaging? You might be throwing lots of shots that don't land. Well, it might be that you're throwing them too far out of range for that shot to be effective. There are things that you'll see where people are almost fighting the shield rather than the fighter. And so they get kind of caught up by the distance of the shield, thinking they're in range, but they're actually ranging themselves off the opponent's shield. And so the shots they throw basically just smash into the edge of the shield, but the opponent is actually a foot and a half behind that. And so you have to measure yourself from the opponent. So, you can check those sorts of things and look at how you're throwing shots, how your opponent is throwing shots, because this isn't just about you. This is about making your opponents better so that you get a better fight, a tougher fight, and that helps you improve as well. So checking out for range and measure, pressure and control. And this comes down to those little twitch battles that you see, but even without the twitch battles, you can get a sense of when someone feels like they're in control enough to take a step or move and push. How are they putting pressure on you? How are they controlling you? How are they moving you? Do they have a sort of pattern that they do where they might always go down the shield side? Do they always go down the sword side? And is there a feint and a fake there that applies pressure on one side, which kind of comes back to feints, cues, and trend and reactions? Are they applying pressure down one side to move you that way, to create the gap to come down the other side? So you can start to really break down where you see those pressures and controls being kind of going to and fro, because it's pretty rare that one fighter is 100% in control of the fight throughout the entire fight. And it might be that if you've got like someone at a really high level and someone at a low level, you might see that. But, there are moments where somebody who might come in and take control, it might drop. They might drop a moment. They might make a mistake. They might do something and they lose control. Does the other person take that control in that moment and pick that up? So things that you can look at there. So that is all of that. And they're just some things I thought I'd share, because it's stuff that we talk about. We talk about analyzing fights. We talk about breaking these things down, but often it can be missed on the how. How do you break it down? What are you looking for? What are you trying to analyze? So there's a whole bunch of things that you can take away and start to really hone in on looking for. And you might spend your night just looking at one of those things. You might spend your night looking at a few of those things. You might watch one fight over and over and over again to see, well, what was my movement in that fight? Now, what was my posture and alignment like? What was my shield and sword control like? What was my range control like? So you might watch the fight over and over again so that you can see all of these different things and really start to learn more and more about the technique that you have. It's a fascinating thing. Now, I got pretty good and got knighted, in all honesty, without really being able to explain what I did when I fought. I was such an intuitive fighter. And I've tried to make it more and more of a study over the years to get better at understanding what I do as a fighter, so that I can explain it to somebody else and help them get better. And sort of getting myself into a mix of people who are able to help explain how to look for those things and break that down has been invaluable to me. So hope that's of use to you. And if it is, have a look at the next video that'll pop up and apply some of the techniques. And I will see you on the next one.